Hello, hello, Red Cape Revolution. Today I am here with my friend Marcia Dawood, who is the author of an amazing book called Do Good While Doing Well. And it has been a privilege to be able to get to know Marcia a bit. She is an angel investor. She is a TEDx speaker and somebody who has really been a source for me learning about what this world of angel investing and doing well while you can do good for yourself too is all about. So, welcome, Marcia. Welcome to Red Cape Revolution.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, great. So, Marcia, so we talk about this term angel investing. And so when people think about any kind of investing, they either think about like Shark Tank and they think, well, I'm
Mhm.
not Mark Cuban. I'm not going to give you $1 million for 20% of your company or whatever. They think that this is out of reach. But I would love to hear a little bit about what your work is all about and how you got started in it and making angel investing more accessible for more people, people like me, people like our audience that are watching today.
Sure. So I didn't know anything about angel investing in 2012 when I was first invited to an angel investing group meeting. I remember saying, "Oh, cool. Wait a minute, what's that?" And so I come to find out that basically entrepreneurs are in every city, in every town, and they're working on some really incredible innovations. And I had been working in corporate America for a very long time, kind of doing the same thing and expecting different results, kind of, mentality, and going to the same kind of meetings and thinking to myself, what is going on here? And then I had my eyes open to this amazing entrepreneurial ecosystem that exists pretty much all over the world. And I thought, oh my gosh, where have I been? This is fascinating. I love hearing about what people are working on and all these different things, like stuff I would have never thought about, and things that are actually helping our planet, helping people. They're helping to cure diseases or treat diseases. And I thought, geez, how could I be a part of this though? Because I don't have a finance degree. Like to your point, I'm not a Mark Cuban. I don't have millions of dollars to put into this. So what? How could this be for me? Well, and then I come to find out that really angel investors are people who help these early stage companies to be able to grow and scale. The whole idea is that they scale so that then they can, either get acquired by a bigger company or in some cases they'll go public. But the whole idea is to get the product to market or get whatever their situation is, with their product or technology out into the world. And so I just thought, wow, this just seems so inaccessible. Like it really was just for the rich, it's just for the well connected. But over the years, it really has changed quite a bit. And now people can get involved for as little as $50 using equity crowdfunding. But it isn't something that's talked about a lot. And these new changes have only existed for a couple of years. So these myths of being rich, having to be rich, having to be well connected, is that still exists. And even though it's starting to change, we just aren't talking about it enough. We have a bit of an awareness problem. So then I come to find out as I start to get more interested in this from 2012 until about 2014 that women and people of color are only getting like a fraction of the amount of money that's actually out there to be used for innovation. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, I can't believe that they only have a fraction of the good ideas. So what's what's going on here? Something's wrong. But it turns out that there just aren't enough people who look like them writing checks or in the investment seat, making the decisions. And I thought, well, huh. I would talk to people and they would say, "Oh, that's so interesting. I think I'd really like to do that, but that's not accessible for me. I don't it just seems so daunting, it's so much." Um, but what I try to do in the book is demystify that. So the book isn't really about the ins and outs of angel investing from the standpoint of like knowing all the terms and the lingo. Yes, I teach that a little bit, but it's more like before the steps before that. Like, why would somebody even want to do this? What's the purpose? How does it help other people? How can you as one person even make a difference? So that's really kind of been my mission to really demystify what this is all about.
Yeah, it is so mysterious. And yet, when you think back, I'm just looking around my office here, and every single thing that was here, somebody had to create it, invent it, make the machine that made it, make the process that delivered it to the machine that made it, right? There's so many things that get developed out there, and every year it's not just new hot technology. I think there's also a lot of business to business type things and things that we may not see directly. And you had a personal experience just in thinking about just healthcare, of just like things that were affecting your own family. And I know you talked about this in your TEDx talk, and we'll have a link to that in the show notes on the blog page. But could you share a little bit about just sort of that journey for you?
Yeah. So I came quickly to discover how much innovation is happening in the healthcare system that we don't really even know about. In a lot of cases, people think, oh, well, charities will take care of that. Like if I donate to the Cancer Society, then that money is going to be used to cure cancer. And in a lot of cases, that's true. But the amount of money that actually goes to charities in the US every year is just a fraction of what is going on in the for-profit markets. So if we put the burden all on, the Cancer Society in this example, that's really not fair. There's a lot of other inventions, other innovations that are happening that we could really put our money behind in a different way in order to see those innovations happening. And it happened for me. My mother was diagnosed with ALS in 2016. Unfortunately, it took her life in 2018. But during that time, I knew of a company that was working on a treatment for Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and ALS are very similar diseases, neurodegenerative diseases. So this was being worked on, and I thought, oh my gosh, I can be a part of this. I can actually be an investor and help to bring this company along. Now, of course, it was me and like lots and lots and lots of other people because it takes so long and it's very expensive and it's quite a journey. But that company ended up going public in 2021, and they've gotten a lot of they've really moved the needle on a lot of things related to Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and of course ALS too. So um, I know for me that was like a feel good. It was like this is one of the reasons why you would be an angel investor. Yes, you want to make a financial return. And there's a lot of data out there about if you are um, investing in a diversified way, you're actually thinking about how to put your money to work so that you're covering a lot of bases, that you can get a nice financial return over time. But, and that's great. We all want a financial return, don't get me wrong. But that isn't the only reason you're becoming an angel investor. You're doing it for a lot of different reasons. And for me, a lot of it was like, could I be actually a part of that change? Could I help to create something that would mean that other people wouldn't have to suffer the way my mom did?
Yeah, yeah. And we're such a great point. We're sorry for your loss of your mom, but to think about that, your investment and then the collective investment of others, may help someone else's mom someday, and to be able to have that long game, to be able to have that vision, that there's something that your money is an instrument to kind of help that engine go and create the results, and do good for multiple people, right? For the inventors of, if people put their heart and soul into that drug or product or whatever the result is, as well as then the end state user, the patient, the family, etc. So, and it is fascinating how many of these different ideas are out there. So I'm curious. So as you know, a lot of the folks that I work with at Red Cape Revolution are in busy corporate jobs. Like they're not entrepreneurs, they're not just looking around their community and going, what else is going on? How does somebody who maybe says, yeah, I could invest a little bit. Like I have some money, maybe I'm getting an end of year bonus, or we have a little bit of savings that maybe usually we would either just donate or just put in the bank. But I want to be doing something better. I see the need for people like me to step up and try to create more of a difference in our world, our country. What is a busy corporate person? How do they get started on an angel investing like this?
Yeah. And you know what? There's so much opportunity now where you can make an investment in a fund. And I'm a huge fan of funds because you do get that immediate diversified portfolio. So you could literally just make one investment, write one check, and you would have someone, fund managers, usually there's two or three fund managers that manage a fund, and they would basically pick the companies that are going to be invested in. And it's usually anywhere between 8 and let's say 15 companies that get investment from that money that gets pooled together into a fund. And it's up to the fund managers to deploy the capital, but it's also up to them to stick to whatever the investment thesis is. So whatever they've decided they're going to focus on. And I like that because if you are a busy corporate person and you really don't know kind of where to start or how to do any of this or really how to pick companies, um, you could say, okay, well, let me find a fund that's focused on, and you could think about what are the things that you really care about. That's what I always ask people first before they start to think about writing a check. Think about the things that you care about. Think about what it is that where you'd like to see change in the world. And then see what's going on even in your local community. And that could be just a 5 or 10 minute search online for entrepreneurs near me, or startup events that are happening near me or whatever. And you'll start to get a sense of like, is there an angel group around you? Usually nowadays, angel groups do have funds, so you could just participate that way. So there's a lot of things that people can do. And in the book, I kind of try to lay it out pretty simply. There's like a 1 page um, investment thesis. I call it a halo strategy that people can put together. And so it just makes it a little bit easier. In the workbook, there's some exercises that they can do. I always encourage people to look around, find out what's going on. Don't think, okay, if I'm going to do this, it's all about writing a check. It really isn't. It's more about let's find out what's going on locally. Find out maybe there's somebody that could just use your help, and maybe help could be 1 hour a month, you're talking to somebody who's an entrepreneur locally who could use like an expertise, or maybe a networking brainstorm. Like, who could I get in touch with who would help me grow my business? That type of thing. So there's a lot of things that people can do. You don't have to think, oh my gosh, in order to be an angel investor, I just have to I have to find a company and write a check. That's really not the beginning.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I love the concept of the halo strategy of really thinking, if my intention is to do good with my resources, whether that be money, whether that be time, whether that be energy, because right, that's the bottom line, right? We all feel strapped for resources, yet
right.
there are all these ideas and solutions bubbling up. And if I want to not just sit here saying, "Oh, gee, the world's broken," I'm like, okay, I want to. What's the Gandhi phrase? I think you had told me your father had given you a plaque with the Gandhi phrase.
Yeah.
Be the change we
Be
want to
the
see
change you want to see in the world.
in
Right.
the world, right? Yeah, and especially again during times of great transition, turbulence, not just in the U.S. but the world, right? Everyone's going through lots of change. To me, it is a way to do one of the things that I teach a lot, which is how do you take back control? If you're feeling like, well, how do I help something? It's like find somebody to help, find a situation, and having that, but the clarity around document it in the halo strategy, which you have in the book, as well as you have a workbook that's also available online that helps someone go through it deeper, right?
Right. Yeah.
So if someone's done that work and then they know here's the areas, talk about the difference between donation and investing? Because you're right, a lot of people would think, especially we're recording this toward the end of the year, holidays are approaching. They're like, well, you mentioned before, there's like lots of really great charities that are already doing work. There's a tax write-off for that, even though most of us don't fully understand, or maybe it doesn't even apply to us because it's not big enough. But what really is the difference into how those funds get used, or make a difference long term?
Yeah. So, in a lot of cases, women especially are very comfortable with donation. We write a lot of checks to charities throughout the year. And then, of course, at the end of the year, it becomes even more prevalent. But the word investing to a lot of people is kind of scary. Well, if I invest in something, then that means that I really have to get a financial return, or I have to expect to get a financial return. If I don't, then I might be thought of as a bad investor, or I didn't really make a good decision. Yet we donate money and we give that money away quite often. And are we really sure where that money went? Do you know when you give money to a charity? Do you know what it's being used for? Do you know what every dollar is being used for? Some people are very conscientious about that and can go through, and there's a lot of transparency with 501(c)(3) charities where they have to, say what they're using the money for. But do people really ask? I don't know. I don't know of a lot of people that do. So when it comes to investing, I think about it like, yes, again, you want to get a financial return, but it is, when you're investing in a private company, it is a riskier investment from the standpoint of it is something that is illiquid. So if I wanted to go and buy a stock in, let's say, Apple, one share of Apple stock, I could go and do that. I could even buy a fraction of a share nowadays because it's so sophisticated. I could go on to Robinhood or E-Trade and I could buy this share stock and then I could turn around 2 minutes later and sell it if I wanted to. Totally liquid. But with a private company, when you're making an investment or you're investing in a fund, it could take 3, 5, 7, sometimes even 10 years for you to see a return on your money. So these are different types of investments. So at the Angel Capital Association, we always talk about things kind of in buckets. We usually say that, you don't want to put more than 5 to 10% of your investable assets into alternatives, and alternatives would include all kinds of things like art or real estate or things that aren't necessarily traditional. Angel investing falls into that category. Jewelry, stuff that you can't turn over in a minute, basically. It takes a little while. And so just being conscious of what you really want to do with that little bucket of money. And how you're going to basically spread that out over time. And to me, I got to a point where my bucket was empty because I had invested in some things and I was waiting for a return again with the not being liquid. But I saw these other people that could potentially invest too. And I thought, well, I have all this information about how to do it. Um, and I've tried all these different things. I've tried everything from investing in a fund, managing a fund, investing through an angel group. I explain all of this in the book. And then even the things that you can do nowadays with equity crowdfunding, where you can invest just $100 or $200. And to me, it's a great way to actually get your family involved. So a lot of times, like my husband and my stepkids, we'll sit down and talk about different companies and we'll decide like it's a cool exercise that you could do. You could even do it in a mock exercise. You wouldn't even have to actually make a physical investment. But there's platforms out there that for equity crowdfunding, and you could look through them, see what kind of innovations happening in the world, talk to your kids about it, talk to your family, talk to your spouse. It's great dinner conversation. I've had great conversations with my stepkids that I would have never had otherwise if we hadn't been talking about these entrepreneurial companies. And it's actually changed their mindset too, from the standpoint of like some of the things that they might want to do. It made them feel like there was more out there. That wasn't just like, I have to go to college, I have to get a corporate job, blah, 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 blah. There was like more opportunities. And that's kind of what I felt like when I was in corporate America too. I thought, geez, if I had known all this stuff about entrepreneurship and angel investing when I was working in a corporate job, my mindset would have been different, and how I would approach things. Even though I would have stayed in my corporate job and I liked it, I would have thought about it a little bit differently.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea too, even thinking for a team, right? Around a lot of times this time of year, a lot of people say, well, what can I get my team for the holidays? Should we be buying gifts? Should we be making donations, what have you? But the example you use with your stepkids and your husband, it's the being able to look at something collectively that expands our knowledge of things that are possible in the world. Because that's kind of, to me, that's what creativity is all about, right? It's like we see somebody doing something where they put things together in different ways that could give me ideas about what I could do. And I could see that being something for a family, for a team, for a group of friends, of just, do we want to, all 20 people put in $5 and pick one. So when you use the term equity crowdfunding, are you really talking about the things that we know as Kickstarter or Indiegogo? Are those considered equity crowdfunding, just to simplify the language?
So it's considered crowdfunding. The sites you just mentioned, Indiegogo and Kickstarter, are rewards-based crowdfunding. So that's where you would maybe buy something early, you'd get access to something ahead of time. You get to kind of be on the inside before it actually gets manufactured. Then there's donation-based crowdfunding. So you might have heard of GoFundMe if somebody is, in trouble, or somebody just had some kind of tragedy or something happen. And they want to pool money together in order to help a family or something. Equity crowdfunding is very similar. You're pooling your money together, but you do get a small piece of ownership into the company. And so that's a little bit different. And there's a lot of information on every one of these platforms about the companies that you could potentially invest in. And what I like about it is the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, has basically set it up so that there is a lot of transparency around the things that need to be disclosed on these platforms, websites, about each company that is up for investment. So that's why I like it as a starting point for people, because they can see a lot of information. They can see kind of pretty much all the disclosures, all of the videos, all the financial statements if they want to sit and read them. But the best part about the platforms is the comment section, because any question that any investor has to go through the platform, which I like, because then that means that everybody gets to see the questions and the answers provided by the company right there. You can't go and ask the company a question. Even if you knew the founder, you couldn't ask the company a question in email,
Yeah.
because all the questions have to be transparent for any potential other investor to see. So I think that's a great way to learn, because you'll get to see a lot of different kinds of companies. You get to see the types of questions that investors are asking. And I bet you if somebody walks through one of those deals and they look at the company, they're going to have questions. And then they're going to see that the other people have the same kind of questions. And they're going to think to themselves, oh, you know what? This isn't so hard. And I could actually do this too.
Yeah. I know that you've had some of the founders of those platforms on your podcast. You have a great
Mhm.
podcast called The Angel Next Door, where you're talking not only about angel investing, crowdfunding, but also to some of the entrepreneurs. But so on these platforms, are there a few that you can share? This is not a recommendation. This is not financial advice, but just as people are starting to explore this, where they can kind of look around and places that you feel are well run and legitimate, because I think that's always the question that someone has, like, is this real? So
Right. Yeah. And yes, to your point, yes, there's this. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a wealth manager. I'm not giving advice. I'm just basically telling people what's out there. So I've had all three of the main platforms. I've had somebody from all three on my podcast. WeFunder is one of the bigger platforms. And they also do what's called revenue-based financing, which is where you can actually start to get paid back a little bit sooner than you would in a normal angel investment. I've had the CEO of Start Engine on, and then most recently I had the CEO of Republic.com on, and he talks a lot about democratizing the private markets. He also said a very interesting statistic, which I just blows my mind. He said about half of the people that come onto the site make an investment. an investment, not just look around, make an investment in less than a minute.
Really?
And that to me is fascinating because that isn't even enough time to like read the big print, you know? So I guess, I mean, people, I don't know. I guess maybe because it's they're talking about risking $100 versus 100,000. I don't know. I'm just making up numbers, but yeah, I just found it fascinating.
Well, then that is interesting when you think about, the rest of the online space and the growth of things like online gambling and, and even just shopping habits. So to feed that animal in a way of investing in these companies who are following the rules, following SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission here in the US, which you happen to sit on a committee for this for the SEC, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Marcia also has the inside scoop and being influencing, here in US, the sort of the national policies for being able to make this more accessible, but still safe, right? Safe in a way of that any investment, can be safe. You have to do your homework. But you looking at these platforms and the fact that people are willing to invest, put some money in, whereas my concern sometimes with some of the more, I'll call them advertised brands or things that people are using on Facebook is, how much of that money actually goes to the places that it needs to go and what's in fees. And, they're all running, for a profit too. So if someone's interested in exploring this more, maybe doing this with their family over the holidays or setting a goal for the new year and saying, hey, we want to feel more in control. We want to feel like we're helping somebody who wants to help the world, an issue that we care about. They can go to one of these platforms and explore and do their
Yeah.
homework.
Yeah. I
Making.
mean, I think it's a great way to learn without having, I mean, you don't have to invest anything. You can just look and talk about it and even make up your own questions. And, in the workbook, I actually have an exercise of making a mock portfolio and, just giving people an idea of what it would be like in order to build a portfolio off of one of these sites. You can pick whatever one you want. And there's even more out there you can Google, but those are the three that have the biggest market share right now.
Yeah. And that would even be an interesting exercise if you are thinking about what's next for you. If you're experienced professional in a corporate environment and you're like, okay, I'm ready for the next act, or I'm thinking about, if I maybe want to retire from this, but I don't want to retire from life.
Right.
Understanding what other organizations are doing, especially these smaller organizations. I feel like those are so ripe for opportunity, whether that's jobs or part-time or volunteering and knowing what's in your own backyard. Are the companies in those on those platforms also listed like where they're locationally based
Sure. Yeah.
if
Oh,
they're
yeah.
geography, yeah, so which is fantastic, so great.
Yeah.
Well, so Marcia, you mentioned before, and we'll wrap up with this, but that part of the idea of angel investing has been shifting over the years, that it is not just the ultra wealthy, the extra cash laying around, that it is sort of another form of doing well socially, but also potentially getting benefits for yourself, not only financially, but also emotionally and feeling like you're doing a part. What is one thing that you would say to somebody who's listening now, who's questioning whether they're the right person to step into this world?
Yeah. I mean, it is so hard to build a company. And these entrepreneurs are working very hard to bring their innovation to life and scale a company. But there are so many things that each and every person has a different skill set that they could lend or, basically give to an entrepreneurial company. And I've talked to people before who have like amazing backgrounds, and then they'll say, "Well, I don't really have any. I'm not." I'm not an attorney. I'm not an IP lawyer, or I don't have a finance background, so I can't really help an entrepreneurial company. That's so not true. They need help in every single area you can imagine. I mean, think about it. A small company has every need, HR, marketing, sales, all the things. So I always encourage people like you could just start helping companies and it would be really beneficial. The other thing that I have a lot of podcast episodes, several podcast episodes now about that people don't really know about is you can use philanthropic money to invest in a startup company. And if you go to my website, I have playlists now of the different podcast episodes. And one of the biggest ones that people always ask me about is using philanthropic money. This is something that women especially really like this idea, because if you have money sitting in a donor advised fund, or you would like to put money into a donor advised fund, or you would just like to donate money and know that that money is being used to help underrepresented founders like women founders and people of color, then that money can actually go to them. Now, you as the donor in this particular type of investing would never get the money back in your bank account. You wouldn't be able to go buy a yacht or anything with it. But you could then, in turn, either if money came back, you would either be able to have more money to invest in more charities, or you could take it and invest in more for-profit companies until you eventually give it to a charity. But it's a concept. It's a little complicated from the standpoint of like we don't talk about it a lot. It hasn't been really mainstream, but it's becoming more popular. And I think it's a great way, especially if people don't have a lot of time and they'd like to do something like this. It's a way to have like a triple win, in my opinion, because you're getting your tax donation, you're doing something that you're familiar with by donating money, but you're kind of like in the interim, you're taking that money and you're doing something else with it that could potentially be good. And that could mean that you might even have more money to come back that you could then give to charity. So to me, it's a really fascinating way that I think we just need to keep talking more and more about it so that people know. And I think it's a great way, especially for people who are in a corporate job. They don't have a lot of time, but they have some extra money and they know that this could be something that they'd really like to do.
Yeah, it sounds like a great conversation to have with your professional financial planner. You're
Yep.
thinking about your estate, you're thinking about, your aging parents and all that, especially some of us who may not have children or, have like what are we doing with what we're working for and, what are we making with it? So, this is all great. I really recommend picking up the book, Marcia Dawood, Do Good While Doing Well. Marcia, where can people find out more about you and your work?
Yeah, they can just go to my website and it's just spelled out MarciaDawood.com. And yeah, there's all kinds of information. You can actually get the first chapter and the introduction for free. You can download that for free. There's lots of resources. You can download the Halo strategy worksheet for free if you want to. All kinds of fun things.
Great, good. And the podcast is everywhere. It's Angel Next Door, and we'll have links in the show notes on the redcaperevolution.com blog. So, Marcia, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for inspiring us all to do good and do well in our work and our lives. So, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, Darcy.